The sun blazed down on a quiet southern highway, dust swirling in lazy loops across the cracked concrete. A lone gas station stood like a forgotten outpost, its flickering neon sign humming in protest against the summer heat. It was the kind of place travelers ignored unless they were low on gas or desperate for a bathroom. Inside, the cashier, barely 20, leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone. The air conditioning buzzed weakly, doing little to fight the heavy humidity. A black Ford pickup truck pulled up slowly to pump number 4. The engine cut, and out stepped a man whose calm presence carried the weight of 100 stories. He wore faded jeans, black boots, and a simple gray t-shirt. His skin was weathered from the sun, and his eyes were sharp but quiet, like a man who had learned to observe long before he acted. No one in town knew his name. He came and went with the seasons, fueling up and moving on. He moved with the kind of discipline you couldn't fake. His back straight, steps measured, hands always within sight, but never fidgeting. There was strength in his silence. His name was Daniel Cole. No one knew that 20 years ago, he led teams behind enemy lines. No one knew that in Afghanistan, he once saved a convoy ambushed by insurgents with only a pistol and grit. And no one cared. Out here, he was just another black man passing through a white southern town. As Daniel pumped gas, a roar echoed down the road. The stillness of the afternoon shattered as 5 bikers stormed into the gas station lot like wild dogs claiming territory. Their leather jackets were patched and sun-bleached, each bike customized to scream for attention. They laughed loudly, revved engines recklessly, and parked diagonally across 2 spots. The leader, a stocky man with a scruffy beard and sunglasses, hopped off his bike and pointed at Daniel. "Hey, look what we got here, boys," he shouted, voice loud enough to pierce glass. City boy with a clean shirt and not a scratch on his truck. But he's never even changed a tire. The others laughed. Daniel didn't respond. He finished pumping gas, capped the tank, and walked inside. The bikers followed. Inside, the cashier stiffened. He'd seen the gang before. Locals called them the Fangs. They weren't a full MC, motorcycle club, just a pack of drunk misfits who try to act hard. Daniel moved calmly to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and set it on the counter. The lead biker stepped up beside him, brushing his shoulder. "No manners, huh?" the man growled. Still, Daniel didn't respond. The cashier watched with growing unease. The tension was coiling fast, like a match hovering over gasoline. "You deaf or just stupid?" Another biker taunted, circling behind Daniel. "What you doing out here, boy? This ain't your town." The insult hung in the air. Daniel slowly turned. He looked the leader in the eye, not with fear, but with quiet calculation. A silent scan. Then back at the cashier. "Just the water," he said. His voice was deep, calm, measured. The cashier's fingers trembled slightly as he punched the total. $1.50. Daniel slid $2 across the counter. Then came the shove. One of the bikers had crept up close. He pushed Daniel's shoulder hard enough to make a scene. The kind of shove that demanded a reaction, a reason to escalate. And Daniel gave it to them, but not the one they expected. Like a spring uncoiled, Daniel stepped back, pivoted, and swept the man's legs in one fluid motion. The biker crashed to the ground, air knocked from his lungs. The leader lunged, sloppy wild. Daniel sidestepped, grabbed his wrist mid-swing, twisted, and slammed him face first into a snack shelf. Chips exploded into the air like confetti. Another reach for something under his vest. Daniel struck first. A flat palm to the throat dropped him gasping to the floor. 3 men down. The last 2 froze. Daniel didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He simply picked up his water, nodded at the stunned cashier, and walked out the door. His receipt fluttered behind him in the wake of his exit. Outside, the bikers' motorcycles still rumbled. But the pack was broken. Daniel drove off, the roar of his engine calm and controlled. The cashier stood motionless, then whispered to no one in particular. Who the hell was that? They thought they knew who he was, but Daniel King had already been erased from most government systems, for good reason. The gas station altercation had gone viral. Within hours of the video hitting the web, Millions watched a seemingly calm black man single-handedly disarm 3 bikers in seconds. To the world, he was a hero. To a certain few in shadowy offices, he was a threat, a ghost that had re-emerged after years of silence. Daniel sat alone in his modest apartment, lights off, his face lit only by the soft blue glow of his laptop. He wasn't smiling at the video. He wasn't flattered by the public praise. Instead, he stared at his own face frozen mid-action, like it belonged to someone else. A man he had tried to bury, a name that came with consequences. He shut the lid. Too late. The video was already bouncing through encrypted chat rooms, intelligence agencies, and old military archives. Eyes were watching. People who remembered what he was capable of. People who once trained him to be exactly that. You're not a soldier anymore. You're a solution. Those were the words whispered to Daniel the day he was recruited into a classified unit during his final year in the Army. Officially, it didn't exist. No insignia, no records, no accountability. Their job? Interventions that would never make the news. Regime extractions, asset neutralizations, training rebels in far-flung regions. Ghost work, dangerous, off the books, and morally gray. He had excelled. Not because he enjoyed the violence, but because he was precise, focused, predictable only to those who understood the cost of discipline. And when the unit fell apart after a mission went sideways in Syria, Daniel disappeared. Not just from the military, from everything. He buried himself in civilian life, taught self-defense in small towns, drove long-haul trucks, read books, stayed invisible, until the gas station incident. Until now, a woman in a gray suit watched the video on loop. Her name was Special Agent Carmen Doyle. Her office wall was bare except for a single quote. The dangerous are often disguised as the disciplined. She picked up her phone. He's alive, and he's on camera. A voice on the other end paused, then calmly said, "Bring him in, or bury it. Whatever's easier." Carmen sighed. She had worked with Daniel before. Briefly, he had saved her life once. But she knew what he was capable of when cornered. His instincts were screaming. 3 different cars had circled his block in the last 2 hours. Someone had turned off the cell tower 2 streets over. The air smelled wrong, heavy, like danger. He grabbed his pack, the one he hadn't touched in 5 years, and pulled it open. 2 fake passports, burner phone, tactical knife, cash, everything he would need to disappear again. But before he could zip it shut, his laptop pinged. 1 message. No sender ID. No trace. They're coming. Exit through the window. Now. He didn't hesitate. Carmen's tactical team, outside. Confirmed. He's inside. Carmen stepped out of the van, watching her team surround the building. He won't run, she muttered. He's too smart for that. But Daniel was already on the roof, moving like a shadow, unseen, untouchable. By the time they burst into the apartment, the place was empty. Carmen looked around. He knows we're onto him. Her second in command, a younger agent named Taylor, held up the burner phone Daniel left behind. It was powered off, except for one detail. Etched into the back, a message scratched with a knife. "I warned you once. Don't make me disappear again." DK. Daniel sat in a cheap roadside diner, hood pulled low, eyes fixed on the highway. He wasn't running. Not yet. He was calculating, preparing. The gas station wasn't random. The bikers weren't either. Someone had orchestrated it. Tested him. But why? That's when she walked in. Black leather coat. Short hair. Calm eyes. The last person Daniel expected. "Carmen Doyle," he said under his breath. She sat across from him without a word. Slid a manila envelope across the table. "Before you walk away again, you need to see this." Daniel opened the envelope. Photos. Documents. Maps. Military intel. Then one picture made his blood run cold. It was of a young boy, tied to a chair, terrified. Carmen leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "They took your godson, and they want you to come for him." Daniel's hand clenched the photo so tight it crumpled. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. Rage. Focus. "Tell me everything. Who took him?" Carmen looked around, lowered her voice. "The same people we used to work for. The unit. They're back. And this time, they've gone rogue." Daniel stood slowly. The warrior inside him was wide awake now. Then they just made their last mistake. They thought they had the upper hand, but they picked the wrong man to mess with. A black veteran found himself in the crosshairs of a group of hostile bikers, men who judged him by his appearance and underestimated the quiet strength in his eyes. What they didn't know was that he wasn't just any man. He was trained, disciplined, and dangerous in all the right ways. It started when he walked into a gas station just off the highway. The roar of motorcycles outside didn't faze him. But inside, the atmosphere grew tense. The bikers, loud, obnoxious, and looking for trouble, decided to make him their target. They hurled insults, trying to provoke a reaction, but the veteran remained calm. Years of military service had taught him the value of patience and restraint. Still, that didn't mean he was going to take abuse lying down. One biker shoved him. The room fell silent. That was the moment the veteran's instincts kicked in. In a flash, he disarmed the threat with precise, fluid movements. One man on the ground, another clutching his wrist. The rest? Stunned, silent. He didn't boast. He didn't gloat. He simply walked away, dignity intact. Daniel Cole was used to blending in. He preferred it that way. After 15 years in the Army, 6 of them spent deep in classified operations. Daniel had returned to civilian life as a ghost. The kind of man who walked quietly through the world, carrying both scars and skills few could comprehend. He had done things most people wouldn't believe. Fought wars no one talked about. Saved lives. Taken some too. Now he just wanted peace, but peace had a way of eluding men like him. The gas station incident had gone viral. Someone recorded it, uploaded it, and now the clip had been shared across social media. Most hailed him as a hero. Some mocked the bikers. But a few people, the wrong kind, started asking questions. People who recognized more than just a clean takedown. They saw signs, technique, a level of combat proficiency far beyond average self-defense. Daniel's name was now on the radar, not just of internet users, but of men who lived in the shadows, just like he used to. Late one night, Daniel received a call from an old contact. "You're burning hot coal," the voice said. That little scuffle just lit a fire. People are looking, and not just anyone. The name Bishop came up. Daniel froze. Bishop wasn't just a name, he was a nightmare. A former CIA contractor turned rogue. A man Daniel had crossed paths with years ago in an operation that went horribly wrong. A man he thought was dead. Apparently not. As the call ended, Daniel realized something chilling. That biker gang, they weren't random thugs. They were connected to Bishop, to something much bigger than a roadside insult. And now they knew Daniel was alive. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the grainy freeze frame of the gas station security footage that had been sent to him anonymously. There, on the edge of the frame, away from the chaos of the confrontation, was a man with a tattoo. A red serpent coiled around a cross. The mark of the Red Vultures. It wasn't just a gang. It was a syndicate, a shadow network of ex-military, bikers, traffickers, and mercenaries. And Bishop was one of its architects. Daniel had crossed them before. Years ago, during a covert assignment in South America, Daniel led a black ops team to dismantle a weapons pipeline run by Bishop. That op ended with explosions, betrayal, and the presumed death of Bishop. Daniel was wrong. Now the Red Vultures were in the States, operating under the radar, recruiting, expanding, and they remembered Daniel. He made a call. "Tasha, it's me, Daniel." Her voice, once familiar and warm, now edged with surprise. "It's been years. I need intel. Anything you can dig up on a biker outfit operating between Nevada and Arizona. Look for the Red Vultures." And Bishop, there was silence. "You're serious? You think Bishop's alive?" "I know he is." Tasha was a former analyst turned freelance intelligence broker. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. She just said, "Give me 48 hours. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to the gas station. It was boarded up, closed for maintenance. But he saw the signs. A shattered security camera. Fresh tire marks behind the building. The faint smell of oil and rubber and something else, blood. Someone had cleaned up. He checked the back lot. Found a piece of cloth stuck in a fence. Leather, torn, with a faint red insignia stitched into it. He pocketed it. Suddenly, footsteps. Daniel turned, instinct sharp. A young woman stood there. Pale, nervous, clutching a backpack. You're him, aren't you? From the video. Daniel didn't speak. They took my brother. After you fought them. Said he had to answer for being careless. I followed them. I know where they went. Her voice trembled. Please, you have to stop them. Daniel's jaw clenched. Show me. They drove for hours deep into the desert. The girl, her name was Lila, showed him a dusty stretch of road that led to an old mine shaft. From a distance, it looked abandoned. But through binoculars, Daniel saw movement. Armed men. A watchtower. Surveillance. This wasn't just a hideout. It was a base. Daniel turned to Lila. You stay here. I'll get your brother. She grabbed his arm. Be careful. They're not just bikers. They kill without blinking. He nodded. He knew that better than anyone. Night fell. Daniel moved like a shadow, weaving through the terrain with silent precision. He neutralized the first guard quietly, taking his weapon. He found the lower chambers, crude cells built into the rock. He found Lila's brother, bruised, bloodied, but alive. We're getting out, Daniel whispered. But just as they moved for the exit, click, the unmistakable sound of a shotgun cocking. A voice echoed through the darkness. Well, the ghost returns. Daniel froze. From the shadows stepped a tall figure with a familiar face, twisted by time and hatred. Bishop, I always knew you'd come back. And now I've got you. Daniel stood alone in his garage, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Before him lay a map of roads, known biker routes, and recent crime scenes. Pins dotted the map like battle points on a war front, connected with red thread. His military training had long taught him how to see patterns in chaos, and the threads were forming a noose around someone. The name on the center pin, Gunner, the biker with the snake tattoo who had first picked the fight. Daniel had spent the past week shadowing Gunner. He watched him drink at Iron Horse Tavern, follow him to his warehouse meetings, and once even witnessed a brutal shakedown behind an abandoned gas station. He didn't intervene. Not yet. Daniel needed to understand how deep this web went before he made his move. That night, Daniel visited a contact from his past. Bishop, a retired intelligence officer turned off-the-grid tech wizard. Bishop had built surveillance systems for Black Ops, and Daniel needed him now. I don't do this anymore, Bishop growled, his graying beard brushing the rim of his coffee cup. You owe me, Daniel replied. Thailand, 2007. Silence. Then a nod. What do you need? By morning, Daniel had a tiny drone camera, bug burner phones, and a live feed setup in his garage. He was no longer just reacting. He was hunting. Across town at the Iron Horse Tavern, Gunner sat with two others, Jesse and Torque. Jesse was sharp-eyed, all nerves and fury. Torque was calm, calculating, with a prison tattoo that slithered from his jaw down his neck. You sure this guy's just some vet? Jesse spat, lighting a cigarette with shaky fingers. No, Torque said flatly. He fights like one of us. Maybe better. Gunner leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Doesn't matter who he was. If he's snooping, we cut him loose. Daniel watched the whole exchange from his garage feed. Audio was choppy, but clear enough. The words "cut him loose" echoed like a bell. He had them. He leaned over and pressed a button on his console, switching feeds to a warehouse he suspected was their stash house. Bishop had planted a motion-triggered camera the night before. There, a man in a biker vest was loading crates into a truck. One of them split open, revealing not just guns, but military-grade surveillance gear, stolen gear. The same kind Bishop had once used. This wasn't just a biker gang. This was organized crime with military connections. Later that night, Daniel met up with Detective Lisa Monroe, the only law enforcement officer he trusted. She was ex-military herself and had been trying for years to bring down the gang, but red tape and insider corruption always stood in her way. Tell me you've got something real, she said. I've got everything. Guns, gear, names, plans. She looked him dead in the eye. Then we move. Tomorrow. Daniel hesitated. Not yet. I want Gunner to know who brought him down. I want him to feel it. Lisa narrowed her eyes. You're playing a dangerous game. I played worse, Daniel said. And I always win. The next day, Daniel trailed Gunnar to the warehouse. But something was off. The place was too quiet. No movement, no deliveries, no Jesse, no torque. He crept in, gun holstered but ready. The warehouse lights flicked on, blinding. From the shadows, Gunnar's voice echoed. "Thought you were watching me, but we've been watching you." Daniel's eyes widened. Cameras lined the walls. Not his. The door slammed shut behind him. Then came the sound of a gun cocking. A bullet slammed into the wall inches from Daniel's head. He dove behind a crate, adrenaline kicking in. From the rafters, Gunnar called out, "You want a war?" The plan was simple, at least on paper. Daniel would lure the gang into thinking they had the upper hand, expose the corrupt law enforcement shielding them, and record every interaction for the authorities watching in the wings. But simple plans rarely survive contact with chaos. The night air was damp with tension. Daniel crouched in the shadows outside an abandoned steel mill on the outskirts of town. It was the gang's unofficial meeting place, out of reach from city lights, but not from Daniel's surveillance drones and audio equipment. His fingers hovered over his phone as he monitored the feed from the small camera he'd embedded in the mill's rafters. The gang had no idea they were being watched. Inside, Gage, now aware that someone had been tracking their movements, paced in frustration. "We got a ghost on our backs," he growled. "I want him found. I want him broken." The others nodded silently. Tension in the room was thick, but it wasn't just fear. It was uncertainty. Whoever was hunting them knew too much, moved too silently, and struck too hard. Daniel's trap had worked. They were afraid. Elsewhere, Special Agent Carla Vaughn was running logistics. After watching the footage Daniel had sent, the FBI couldn't ignore the web of corruption strangling the city. Carla had once served in Iraq with Daniel. When he reached out, she knew he wasn't chasing ghosts. He was chasing justice. "We move on your signal," Carla had told him earlier. "But I swear, Daniel, you better not go full rogue." "No promises," he'd said with a smirk. Daniel stepped into the open. A floodlight flickered on above him, casting his tall figure in sharp relief. The click of cocked guns echoed in the distance. Well, Gage sneered as he stepped out from the mill's doorway. "If it isn't our ghost." Daniel didn't flinch. "Gage, you've got one chance. Walk away and hand over the files, or this ends badly for you." Laughter erupted from the men around him. Gage raised his pistol and pointed it straight at Daniel's chest. "You're outnumbered. Outgunned. What makes you think you're walking away tonight?" Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a small remote. "Because while you've been busy watching your backs, I've been watching everything else." He pressed the button. All at once, the night came alive with the buzz of drones, flashing blue lights, and the roar of black SUVs rolling in. Armed agents spilled out, yelling commands, sweeping the area. Panic ensued. Gang members scattered, trying to flee, but it was too late. Carla emerged from one of the SUVs, her weapon trained on Gage. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Gage's face contorted with fury and disbelief. "You set me up," he spat. Daniel didn't move. "You set yourself up the day you threatened my family." But just as it seemed over, a sharp crack pierced the chaos. A sniper shot. One of the agents went down. Carla ducked, scanning the rooftop. "We've got another shooter." Daniel spun around just in time to see a masked figure aiming a second shot directly at him. Time slowed. He dove. The bullet grazed his shoulder. Pain erupted. Carla returned fire, but the masked gunman vanished into the darkness. Back in the aftermath, the FBI had secured half the gang, confiscated weapons, and seized hard drives containing years of dirty dealings. But the masked sniper had disappeared. Gage, captured and wounded, refused to speak. Something deeper was going on. Who was the shooter? Carla asked as Daniel's wound was dressed. Daniel clenched his jaw. Someone with military training. Someone who knew exactly where I'd be. Carla's eyes narrowed. "You think you were betrayed?" Daniel didn't answer immediately, but his gut churned. Someone had tipped them off. A name surfaced in his mind, one he hadn't thought of in years. In a dark office lit only by the glow of computer screens, a figure watched the drone footage from that night. A woman's voice spoke from the shadows. "He's getting too close." The man turned. "Should we eliminate him?" She hesitated. No, not yet. Let him think he's winning. When the time is right, we'll end it. Daniel sat alone in his apartment later that night. The painkiller haze not strong enough to dull the gnawing in his gut. He opened a dusty box tucked away in his closet. Inside were old photographs, army medals, and a sealed envelope labeled Project Ember, Top Secret. He stared at it. His hands trembled as he opened it. His eyes widened. His whisper barely escaped his lips. Oh my God, it was never about the gang. The thunderstorm had passed, but the air still hung heavy over the town. News of the biker gang's arrest had spread like wildfire. The community, once terrified and silent, now buzzed with cautious hope. For the first time in months, the streets felt safe. Daniel sat alone in his garage. The motorcycle he once rebuilt for peace now coated in the dust of battle. His knuckles were bruised, not just from the final fight, but from the years of war he had carried with him. A war that never truly ended. The FBI agents left that morning. They took with them files, hard drives, and the gang's detained leaders. But what Daniel gave them was bigger, a confession. Not of crimes, but of truths hidden beneath the surface. How veterans were ignored, justice delayed, and corruption allowed to fester. They promised change. Daniel had heard that before. Still, there was one more thing he needed to do. Daniel visited Cassie's grave just before sundown. The wind whispered through the pine trees, carrying the scent of soil and flowers. He knelt, placing a dog tag beside her stone. "We did it," he whispered. "Your father finally kept his promise." From behind, footsteps crunched. It was Sheriff Laney. "Daniel," she said, "we need to talk. There's something else, something the Bureau missed." Daniel stood slowly. "I thought it was over." Laney handed him a file. "It's not. You were right. The gang wasn't the root. They were the cover. There's a politician in the Capitol. Funded everything. Ordered the hits. Protected the gang." Daniel's face hardened. "Name." She gave it. Daniel looked at the grave one last time, then turned toward the road. Cassie always said justice was a journey, not a destination. And Daniel had one last road to ride. The end.